Hello, everyone. This is the weekly review for U.S. history from May 17th to May 28th. It's actually a bi weekly review because both weeks were a little bit shortened. We worked in pairs or groups of three to determine which varying interpretations about the Vietnam War were most viable. Students were asked to compare the interpretations and make judgments about which interpretation about the war they most agreed with, and also to explain why. This was part of the varying interpretations summative for the unit on the 60s and Vietnam. We then moved on to our next unit on the 70s and 80s. We started with an analysis of Nixon and Watergate with an in-class assignment. We read a PDF about Nixon and Watergate, and then we worked in class to determine historic themes connected to Watergate, important people who were involved in the Watergate scandal, and turning points and consequences of the scandal as well. We also examined a different scandal that disrupted a presidency in the 1980s, the Iran-Contra affair. We worked in class to examine a video, a short reading, a list of events, and a primary transcript that dealt with Iran-Contra. We then answered some questions together in class about those sources. Our executive functioning skill continued to be positive relationships throughout this 2-week period. Students were given several opportunities to establish positive relationships as they worked together to complete assessments. At the beginning of the second week, students were introduced to the Level 1 and 2 formative for analyzing and critiquing historical eras for the 1970s and 1980s. Students were asked not only to list people, events, turning points, and consequences of both the Watergate and Iran-Contra scandals. In addition, students were also challenged to engage in a deeper analysis of one of the scandals and the people, events, turning points, and consequences that were involved in that particular scandal of their choosing. At the end of the week, we worked on a writing prompt where we brainstormed and listed several points and pieces of information connected to both Watergate and the Iran-Contra scandals. We also compared and contrasted the scandals by listing similarities and differences between them. One similarity was that they both involved the possible impeachment of presidents that were involved in the scandal. One difference was that the presidents were different, the time periods were different, and also the motivation was different. One scandal was brought about by the fact that the president wanted to try to get reelected, so it was a personal reason, and the other one was brought about by the fact that the president wanted to do everything in his power to stop communism, so there was sort of an external reason. So we also worked towards explaining the significance of at least one enduring theme in the era, explaining the details of at least 2 significant events and one major turning point in the era, evaluating the impact of at least one important person from the era, explaining how the elements of this era suggest implications for the future, and comparing and contrasting and/or describing cause and effects in relation to major events, turning points, people, themes, and/or implications. All work we've done before for units in the past in our examination of U.S. history. What's coming up next? We'll work on the analyzing and critiquing historical eras, the 70s and 80s. Both formative and summative assessments will be worked on and completed this coming week. We'll have an extra ticket on positive relationships and begin focusing on our last executive functioning skill of the year, which will be dependability, an important one given that we need to be finishing up work and be dependable about that as the year comes to an end. And we will begin our examination of the last unit, 1990 to the present, a new world order and challenges of the 21st century. That's it for now. Take care.